Ginny Andersen first.
Thank you very much. I'm interested to know, do you still hold the view that the SIS threat assessment shows that Muslims pose a greater risk to the Jewish community in New Zealand than white supremacists?
May I call you Ginny?
Sure.
Ginny, I've been in the role 6 months. What has become very apparent to me is that human rights are actually about how we live with each other. At the end of the day, that's what human rights are, about a set of rules and processes about how we live with each other. That is inevitably contentious, and we've had I would say, scores of meetings and conversations with people in the first 6 months in my role about the challenges facing New Zealand. Now, if my language has been injudicious on some of those occasions, then I have apologised for that. I've apologised publicly, I've apologised privately, I've met with FIANs to hear their concerns and to apologise to them both in person and publicly, and I hold to that apology.
So are you saying that you no longer think that the SIS threat assessment reflects that Muslims pose a greater threat to the Jewish community? You no longer hold those views, or you still hold those views?
One of the reasons that we have these conversations is to get new advice. And if you look at the correspondence around this, I went back to them and said, I will adjust my position in keeping with new information, and I have received new information. I don't hold to that view.
So you step back from that view?
I step back from that view,
that's good to know.
Yes. Yep.
In terms of Afghan refugees in West Auckland, do you think they hold any particular risk in New Zealand?
So, Ginny, look, I think it's going to be really, really unhelpful if I get into a he said, she said, but I did not say the comments that were attributed to me about that.
Right, okay.
So I do not believe that. So I want to be very clear about that, because a lot of those Afghan refugees put their lives on the line to keep New Zealand soldiers safe in Afghanistan. So I emphatically deny that I said that.
Right. Can you see that saying those things or even a perception that you said those things would undermine the trust and confidence of New Zealanders who look to you to create racial harmony within our country?
Absolutely. I do see that. And that's why I've been unequivocal in my apology, number one. Number two, it's why I've also written as recently as yesterday to the chair of FIANs to say that I will do everything in my power to rebuild that relationship. And I would also add that, and it's not to do with me, but the Race Relations Commissioner has spent a great deal of time with the Muslim community, particularly around the March 15 events. And so we're putting a lot of effort into that, and I will do everything that I can to restore trust in that relationship. And I'm very disappointed that I allowed my words to create a perception that there was a prejudice there, which is not the case. And I'm very disappointed with myself, and I'm very disappointed that I have let my fellow commissioners and the extraordinary staff of this organisation down. So please be assured that I take this as a learning, and I will be far more measured with my comments in future. And I have apologised publicly, and I repeat that here, Ginny.
Do you think it's tenable for you to continue in your role within the first few months you have deeply offended the Muslim community in New Zealand as Race Relations Commissioner for us?
Well, as Chief Human Rights Commissioner.
Race Relations, Human Rights, apologies.
Yeah. Well, so I am very new in the role, and I take this role very seriously, and I've thought about these issues my entire life, and this has been a real learning for me. So I intend to continue in this role, and I'm going to do my very best to repair those relationships, to learn from this experience, and frankly, Ginny, probably to do a bit more listening and a bit less talking.
What was it that led you to sort of make those comments? Was it you just weren't thinking, or was there any views in terms of how you came to be making those comments, which you've now stepped back from?
Well, I mean, the SIS material is there, and I had read this prior to the meeting that we went into. I guess, Ginny, may I step back from this just a minute and try and explain where I was coming from? And I don't want to get into justifying it. I've apologised, and that's it. All right, and I want to move on. I want to rebuild that relationship. But we heard, one of the first things that we heard was from Muslim people who said that before the mosque attacks, they had been raising concerns about their safety that had not been listened to. Number one. Number two, we then experienced the feedback from the survivors of abuse in state care. And what did they say? We were raising our concerns and no one listened to us. So when the Jewish community came to me early in my role and said they were not feeling safe, I took that very seriously and thought I actually need to look into this and understand it better. So that's the context for then the discussions. And we've met, Ginny, with, I mean, I'd have to get Mary Ann to advise it, but the number of groups who operate, if we might describe it as in the domestic context of the Middle Eastern challenge, has been scores. And in one of those conversations, I raised the SIS material because of this I think we have a duty to listen to the fears of the Jewish community, and that's what I was doing.
And just
that's the context.
One last question. Can you acknowledge that being appointed by this government, the same government that has repealed all of the laws put in place after the March 15th massacre, where 51 people lost their lives and specifically affected the Muslim community, then to have the comments made by the Human Rights Commissioner that are specifically targeted at the Muslim community, can you see that the Muslim community within New Zealand does not feel well represented by this government?
I can't comment on political issues, Ginny. What I am concerned about is a Human Rights Commission, and I'm absolutely emphatic, and I've said it in all the subsequent statements, that I am the Human Rights Commissioner for every New Zealander, and that includes every Muslim, it includes every transgender person, and that is my responsibility, and I take it very seriously indeed.